As we've been talking about off and on throughout the evening, this is National School Choice Week, and there's no doubt the momentum for school choice continues to grow. We have had landmark school choice laws that have recently passed in places like West Virginia, Arizona, Iowa, and there are at least half a dozen other states that are considering similar universal school choice legislation. And so here we are, we applaud all of this success. I mean, it is extremely important to consider the importance of school choice, but for Christians, very interesting angle that I want to bring our next guest into. School choice, he says, is not just about education, but it's about discipleship. And listen to this, school choice provides a chance for parents to determine who will be the primary spiritual influence of their children. I love that concept. Joining me now to discuss this is Joseph Backholm. He's a senior fellow for biblical worldview and strategic engagement at Family Research Council. He is an extremely familiar face and voice here on Washington Watch. Joining us now by phone, Joseph, thank you for joining us. We're honored to have you back on Washington Watch.
Good to be with you, Jody. Thank you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you as well. And listen, I read the article. In fact, I have it just here in front of me that you have written regarding school choice being an issue of discipleship. I think that is an incredibly thrilling and insightful perspective. Describe for us further what you mean.
Yeah, Jody, between kindergarten and 12th grade, if you go through a typical education schedule, you'll spend 16,000 hours in a classroom. And a lot of us have a kind of a dualistic view of education where we go to a classroom to just learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then we go to church and we go to our parents to have our spiritual formation happen. But the evidence is pretty clear that those 16,000 hours inside a classroom is not just teaching us things academically, or in many cases not teaching us things academically, but it is forming our view of the world. It's forming our worldview. It's forming the things we love, we care about, and that is fundamentally what discipleship is about. And so as we are really seeing this revolution in education around the country, I think it's important for parents, Christian parents in particular, to see this not just as about education, but it really is about where they're spending their time, where they are being formed, where they are being discipled. And this is an opportunity for the church to reclaim that opportunity. So we are, again, the ones being the primary influence over our kids. We are the ones discipling.
And I love that approach. And I share with you, Joseph, I hope our listeners and viewers are catching on to this concept. And one of the issues at play here, when it comes to the public school, we're not just talking about educators being neutral. These days, in so many instances, there is outright hostility against Christian faith, Christian ideology, and values.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think neutrality has always been a myth. But 50 years ago, there was more compatibility between a Christian value system and the cultural value system. And now, as that compatibility has disappeared, you really are having to make the choice. Even those who want to believe that it ever was neutral are having to face facts that these are not neutral environments. And increasingly, the education programs in our public universities are pumping out educators who aren't there to just teach your kids reading, writing, and arithmetic. They want to teach your kids how to be, gender neutral and a whole range of things that are completely in conflict with the values of the parents who continue to send their kids to those schools. So neutrality is really not an option. You got to pick which side you're on. We are now in a political environment where we can use the dollars to fund the right side so that our kids are being educated/discipled by people who share our values rather than those who hate our values. That really should be an obvious choice for parents. There's some work to do to build the infrastructure so that there's enough seats for all the Christian kids to be discipled and educated in the right environment. But the opportunity is certainly in front of us if we're willing to put in the work, and I think we should.
Well, Joseph, I couldn't agree with you anymore. We've got about 2 minutes left, and you've been such a leader on this issue. You've written in the past that every church should start a Christian school. And we actually reported earlier this week on how Cornerstone Chapel in Northern Virginia is starting one. In fact, I have a clip here I'd like to play from the pastor, Gary Hamrick, there last year when he announced that they were starting a school in the church, and then get your thoughts. Here's the clip.
20, 25, 30 years ago, the idea of a Christian school was something we thought was nice. But it's no longer time for niceties. It's a time of necessity.
No longer time for niceties. This is a time of necessity. Give me your reaction.
No, I think he gets that exactly right, Jody, that this is a need. It's one thing to say, oh, that's a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's a matter of survival for our kids' souls. The conversion rate in the government school system of Christian kids to secularism is really, really, really high. We want to think we can send them there to be missionaries, and the reality is, in most cases, the opposite is happening. That's why it is a necessity to make sure that our kids are being discipled to love and do and appreciate the right things, not just know that there's a difference between boys and girls, right? That's a bare minimum standard for what we do with our kids until they're 18. We got to raise the bar, and the opportunities in front of us.
Joseph, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. We appreciate your input.